All right. First rule of this channel, we do not talk about this channel. Second rule of this channel, this is not legal advice. So, welcome to the Sit Start Grift show for week 13, where I'd rather be wrong about the guys I could predict than be right about the guys that I couldn't. So, moving into the week, we have bye weeks for the Bills, the Bears, the Raiders, the Vikings, the Giants, and Baltimore. Next week, it's the Cardinals and the Redskins if you're planning ahead. So, before I get into it a little bit, last night's game between the Seattle Seahawks and the Dallas Cowboys had 76 combined points. So we look at all the guys that got home based off of what we could predict. In a game that I would have predicted ahead of time being like an okay offense and with an okay defense going up against a good offense with a good defense. So the expectation being that it would be a pretty good game script for both teams to score points. So I would be rolling out a lot of guys for the Cowboys, expecting that there's a lot of guys that could get home, and then most of the regular guys that we normally roll out for the Seahawks. So in this game, you see with that expectation of that neutral script, and if you're wondering, before I get ahead of myself, Vegas had 47 and a half points combined in this game. So that means like we should be rolling out a lot of guys. So Geno Smith gets home with his 3 touchdowns and then another one on the ground. I probably wouldn't have been rolling out Geno Smith, even though the tea leaves say there would have been a lot of points for Seattle to have in this game. Zach Charbonnet, even though he's going up against the Cowboys, we'd be rolling him out based off of volume alone. DK Metcalf has his the best game as he's had all year with 3 touchdowns, 134 yards. I would have been rolling him out. I probably would have been rolling out Jackson Smith, the Jigba, and Tyler Halakis because of the bye. JSN sort of gets home. Tyler Lockett, I guess, like you'd be okay with those 40-degree type days. Wouldn't be too upset about it. From the Cowboys perspective, Dak's pretty much elite this year, so you'd be rolling him out based off of all matchups. Tony Pollard's been a little disappointing, but he did find the end zone, and that's to go along with 3 other receptions for 15 yards. CD Lamb does have a really good game, 12 receptions, 116 and a touchdown. And then Jake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks find the end zone. So we see that there's from the Cowboys perspective, there's 5 fantasy relevant guys that get home. So that's what we're thinking, like beyond just like the quarterback, maybe the volume based running backs, the number 1 wide receivers. Can we go out and can we try and predict the guys that are going to be like the number 2 wide receivers or those streamable tight ends, number 3 wide receivers? That's kind of what the idea is. So moving on to the weather. In this game, like we have a few games that might be impacted by weather. The Chargers and the Patriots might be impacted by weather. The Falcons and the Jets may have also rain. There's a 91% chance with the Chargers Patriots, 75% chance Falcons Jets, 85% Cardinals Steelers, and then 53% chance with the Dolphins and the Redskins. Panthers Buccaneers may have thunderstorms, but it's only like 10% chance, and then 49ers Eagles may have 56% chance likely showers. And then slight chance of rain with the Chiefs and Packers. So the only games I'm really going to be worried about having the weather influence them are the Falcons and the Jets, and there's only going to be a limited amount of guys I'd be rolling out in that game. And the Cardinals Steelers again, limited amount of guys. But this is heavily based off of the bye week, so we're probably going to be dipping a little bit deeper into our benches than we'd really like to. Chargers, Patriots, another one that would probably be affected. So overall implied Vegas point totals this week, Chargers, Patriots at 40. So that's rather low. Lions, Saints, 47. So that's a little bit on the higher side. Falcons, Jets, obviously that's going to be lower implied points, 33 and a half. Cardinals, Steelers at 41 points. So that's a little on the low side, but like okay. Colts Titans 42 and a half, a little on the low okay, or a little on the low side okay. Dolphins Commanders at 49 and a half, so this is going to be like one of the higher scoring ones of the week. I'm a little surprised that it's as low as it is, but that's because the Dolphins are 9.5 point favorites in this game. So the other one that's a little surprising this week, the Broncos and the Texans were up to 47, and that's with the Broncos only being 3-point dogs. So that's a little surprising to me. 36 and a half for the Buccaneers Panthers, so that's lower scoring. 48 total for the 49ers and the Eagles. Browns and Rams 40 and a half. Chiefs and Packers 42 and a half. Bengals Jaguars 38 and a half. And the interesting thing about that game is the Bengals are 8.5-point underdogs. So they're still expecting the Jaguars to be scoring points. They're just not expecting the Bengals to score points. And again, like I already talked about, if you're wondering, Seahawks and Cowboys 47.5 combined points, and they really should have been, people should have been betting the over on that one. So here are my stats that I'll be drawing off of today, off of ESPN, if you're wondering. So let's get into it. Colts and Titans would not be rolling Gardner Minshew out, even though the Colts play a little fast and the Titans backfield or secondary may be susceptible to the pass. I could definitely see this being like an uglier game. The Titans' best chance to win this game would be to grind it down and not score a lot of points and keep themselves in the game. And if that occurs, like Gardner Minshew's probably not going to hit the passing volume to go along with the fact that he's just not. He is a little bit of a nimbly scrambler, but like that's less predictive than him getting these higher passing volumes totals. And when he has gotten the higher passing volume totals, they've not. Let me see how I explain this. When they have had to pass, he hasn't been as efficient. You see 41 pass attempts, 251 yards. So when he's been able to get there earlier in the season against Jacksonville and Cleveland, where he's got the 300 yards, like he's only capped out at 2 touchdown passes. So we would need like higher passing volume to get the yards to go along with the passing touchdowns that just haven't been there. That's just kind of not the Colts' identity on offense. Will Levis, if you are in a deeper league and you need to be rolling guys out, Will Levis would be a guy to be thinking about rolling guys out for. So to explain this a little bit, the Colts are bad on defense. So they're middle of the road when it comes to passing defenses, and they're not particularly good against the run either. So again, I talked about this earlier. When it comes to trying to predict their was it 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7th overall, 7th worst against the run. So they're going to be susceptible to the play action pass, and that's where Will Levis is going to come in. So again, if we're trying to chase those touchdown passes, this would be a week where the Titans, running well would open up Will Levis to throw bombs. That's just the thought process behind it. Can we predict that? So Zach Moss is going to be a role based off of volume, maybe not the best matchup in the world, but here's a guy that's going to get the two things that we're going to look for. He's going to get the goal line opportunities, and he's probably going to be involved a little bit in the passing game. So when he was involved in the passing game, or when he had the start to or backfield to himself with Jonathan Taylor basically holding out at the beginning of the year, he was involved with the passing game a little bit. So you see like 7 targets, 4 targets, 3 targets, hovering around 4 to 6 area is what the elite is for the running back. So he has the ability to have that receiving floor regardless. So like he's just as long as he's the RB1 there, he's the RB1 in our hearts. Derrick Henry, this is a week to be rolling out Derrick Henry with his volume-based rushing attack again against the Colts team. I would feel pretty good about that. I think that overall Tajay Spears is downgraded now. He's not necessarily a standalone play, even with all the buys. But if you're cuffing, he is priority cuff to Derrick Henry. I don't think there's a cuff right now to Zach Moss because he's basically the cuff already to Jonathan Taylor being out. Michael Pittman would be a role. He's in that wide receiver 2 to low end wide receiver 1 range. So like I'm just setting and forgetting. I'm not going to overthink this. Josh Downs this week, again, because of chasing the targets and the opportunities, even if they're not the most efficient opportunities with all the buys, he would be a role. If you're really in a deeper league and you're shooting for upside, again, a guy that's getting on the field like 100 to 95% of the time, something along those lines. He's Alec Pierce. He's going to be that deep threat guy, can get home at any time with that like bomb. So he would be a guy, if you're just throwing darts, he would be a guy to be rolling out there. DeAndre Hopkins this week, going back to the defenses when we talk about the Colts. He would be a guy that I would be rolling out and feeling pretty good about this week. Lower end. The Colts are okay or not good at the defensive passing. So he would be a guy that I would be feeling pretty good about rolling out and trying to get a hold of the targets, especially with the opportunities for the deep shots. And again, if that's all we're doing when it comes to trying to chase upside with all the buys. So Will Mallory would be a guy like I would just be stashing him at this point. Coming off the start that he got last week, expecting that we're going to get an uptick in snap share and maybe opportunity. So like in deeper leagues, that would be the only thing that I would be looking at with Will Mallory when it comes to tight ends for the Colts. For the Titans this week, Chig is kind of in the running. We did see that slight uptick in opportunity last week. There is going to be opportunity, like the thought process being that the Colts will be susceptible to the play action. So he is in the running for that low end streamer. If he's a top 10 guy this week, it would not surprise me. Even though there probably are safer floor guys than rolling Chig out. The Colts defense obviously is going to be a pretty good role this week against the rookie that's been a little sack and turnover prone. And again, the same thing with the Tennessee Titans. Whenever a team is going up against a turnover machine, Gardner Minshew can be a turnover machine. The Titans would be a good role. They have a good defensive line. They can get sacks. And again, Gardner Minshew fumble and interception prone. All right, moving on. Chargers and Patriots. I would be limiting my amount of exposure to this game overall. Justin Herbert, I probably would be not starting if I could get away with it, but there's other guys in the league that we'll talk about that I would probably feel a little bit better about. This would be one of those situations on Sunday night, Monday morning, whatever. If I saw that Justin Herbert was a bust this week, and I knew it, and I could have predicted it based off some of the other matchups, and I didn't sit him, this would be one of the ones that would bother me. The Patriots have no incentive to make this a nice fantasy script. They have a really good incentive to try and grind it out to that 10-7 game that they had last week with the Giants. So wouldn't be surprised that Justin Herbert doesn't get home, and especially when we talk about some of the other things that are going on with the Chargers wide receivers, it makes me understand more why I probably should have my expectations muted with Justin Herbert going up against the Patriots. Right now, it looks like Bailey Zappi is going to be the starting quarterback for the Patriots. That is not an upgrade to Mac Jones. Just if you're wondering, Austin Eckler hasn't looked particularly good, but again, you probably spent on him, and there aren't a lot of running backs. So a guy that's going to be getting that 70 to 80% of the snaps, like you're just going to be leaving him in there. It doesn't really matter how efficient he is. Joshua Kelly is the cuff if you're into that thing. Ramondre Stevenson is a role, and again, like if we're just chasing the tea leaves when it comes to the Chargers are really bad overall when it comes to defenses, and I don't see them. They're middle of the road when it comes to the run, but we're almost not even chasing Ramondre when it comes to that. When it comes to the Chargers being worst against the pass, what we're actually chasing when it comes to Ramondre this year or against the Chargers is the PPR scamming. So that's what we're looking for with Ramondre. The rushing yards to go are just the gravy. Probably our expectations that there aren't going to be a lot of touchdowns. So he is probably in that RB2 range pretty good right now. Zeke overall limited on Thursday, it says, but the big news, like his snaps have been going down. Ramondre snaps have been going up. So I wouldn't be rolling him out expecting to catch lightning in a bottle this game. But if you're into cuffing, that would be the cuff for Ramondre. Keenan Allen this week missed another practice. I did see earlier, I think on Reddit, that he did practice in a limited capacity today. But this would be what would bother me with the Chargers between him and Quentin Johnston. I haven't seen anything on Josh Palmer when I turned on to record, so I don't even know who necessarily the starting wide receivers would be outside of Keenan Allen. The Patriots do have that game plan where they're just going to take away your number one and force you to go someplace else. That's why overall I think this game would be ugly. I would not be benching Keenan Allen. If you're wondering if he is active, a top 10 wide receiver, I'm just going to roll. But like overall, I could just definitely see this game being really ugly, and that predictably ugly at that. As of 4 hours ago, you can see Demario Douglas still not practicing. There's nobody else that I would even consider rolling for the Patriots in this game, even though the tea leaves with the Chargers would say like roll pass catchers. I just don't know if Demario Douglas is not going to be the starter or in the game. I don't know who else to go after. Devontae Parker would just be one of the guys that would pop up off the top of my head. If you're chasing that, Hunter Henry would be the other guy. If you're in really deep leagues and you're chasing or you're hurting. If Keenan Allen is out, I could definitely see this being a Gerald Everett week. That might be the closest thing to a particular a predictive pass catcher that we could look at when it comes to the Chargers. If Keenan Allen is out, or even if Keenan Allen plays, it may not be a bad week to be rolling out Gerald Everett with the Patriots game plan of taking away the number one. So after that, like I just don't know how we could look at the Chargers pass catchers and throw a dart and go like this guy's predictive. It's going to be his week. It doesn't even predict to be necessarily a shootout, which means that the overall passing volume for Justin Herbert is going to be down. All right. Lions and Saints. So Jared Goff, probably not going to be rolling him out against the Saints. The Saints are okay on defense. It's just not going to be a script that I can imagine that I would be pretty comfortable rolling my pieces out when we look at the Saints against the pass, if I can even find them. Right there. So they're a better the better defense against the pass overall, and I know that they're pretty good also against the run. So I would not necessarily, they're middle of the pack against the run, and that might just be an indication that they're good enough against the pass that teams all they're trying to do is run against the Saints. So moving on in the thought process, wouldn't be rolling Jared Goff out. Jared Goff out doesn't have the rushing floor to make up for a lower volume passing week. And especially like with Gibbs and Montgomery vulturing a lot of touchdowns, it just makes Jared Goff a much harder weekly roll. Again, not going to roll Derek Carr out partially because of the weapons, partially because he's just not that good at football. Jahmyr Gibbs, if I had to guess between the two of these guys this week, it's probably going to be David Montgomery week versus Jahmyr Gibbs week, but I'm rolling both of my guys out, like especially with all the buys. You probably don't have a choice to be even cute about this. So definitely Gibbs and Montgomery are a roll. Alvin Kamara is probably like my running back one for the week, especially in half point PPR and PPR. With all the wide receivers being out for the Saints, those vacated targets tend to go to running backs, and Alvin Kamara is already one of the premier pass receivers you see, like in week 7 where he had 14 targets. So that's something to look at. Right now, Kendre Miller is trending towards not playing. I think last time I saw that he wasn't going to play this week. So if I'm into cuffing, it would be Jamal Williams at this point. I don't think he has any standalone value. And again, this was as of a day ago, Kendre Miller, DNP. Amon-Ra, obviously top 5, top 10 guy I'm rolling out. Doesn't matter the matchup. I think he can get it done overall. Jameson Williams, again, with all the buys, if I'm chasing some type of upside, the guy who's working himself back into the offense always has that opportunity to get home with a deep shot. Relatively safe wide receiver 3 in that boom bust range. This is a guy that almost every single week is going to be quote unquote predictive to get home. So I could definitely see rolling him out if you're hurting versus some of the other guys that we'll talk about later on down the line. Chris Olave did practice today, so he could play. I don't know, I would be rolling him out against the Lions. How much I would be pivoting towards everything, I don't know. Rashid Shaheed, he's probably not going to play this week, so those vacated targets have to go someplace. Again, Michael Thomas being out, those vacated targets. A.T. Perry would be one of the guys that you could definitely see being able to be the recipient, but with Olave potentially being a start, like that would lower the overall value of A.T. Perry. Again, still those vacated targets are probably going to go to Alvin Kamara. Lynn Bowden would be the guy that I'd be most interested in rolling out if all things considered, especially if Olave is not a start. I would probably be rolling Lynn Bowden out and being a little cute about that. If Olave is the start, I probably wouldn't be being that cute about this stuff. Sam Laporta is going to be in that mid range tight end 1. Just don't overthink it. Tight ends can't lose your week. Taysom Hill, again, depending on if Olave plays or not, the Saints may have 2 tight ends that are rollable this week between Taysom Hill and Juwan Johnson. If Olave does play, I would probably be downgrading both these guys into the territory of or Juwan Johnson in particular. I wouldn't be rolling him out. Taysom Hill, I still think he has the volatility to score touchdowns at a much higher rate than Juwan Johnson, so I would be rolling him out with all the buys. All right, Falcons and Jets. Desmond Ridder, not going to be rolling him out against the Jets. Jets still have a good defense. Desmond Ridder's not particularly good at football. Tim Boyle, no, absolutely not. Probably the worst quote unquote starting quarterback in football right now. Bijan Robinson, I'm going to be rolling him out. Primarily the rushing side. I don't know how much they're going to be able to rush against the Jets. And overall, this is not how they're using him, but like maybe the rushing floor will be here. Tyler Algier is the cuff. I wouldn't be rolling him out in this game. I think this is going to be a really ugly game overall. Breece Hall did get a full practice in today. So this is funny because like as I was preparing this, it looked like he was trending towards being out. And now he gets the full practice in. So I would be expecting him to play in this game. So that means downgrade the possibility of Dalvin Cook being like a starter if Hall doesn't play, if he's inactive. And then I was going to talk about like if I think Abanikanda may end up being the cuff overall to Breece Hall, but if you're into cuffing on this really bad offense, it would probably be Dalvin Cook still. Drake London, I would be rolling out in this game. He's one of those guys, Drake London. You're actually battling the quarterback and the head coach more than the matchup. Drake London has the ability to get it done in all those different ways, and with all the bye weeks at this point, I think he pushes him up into that wide receiver 2 land because they can design plays to him. He can be a contested catch guy. He can work the middle of the field. It's just a matter of like, is the coaching staff going to want to get him the ball on a week-to-week basis? So like, he would be a guy with all the buys that I would feel pretty comfortable rolling out there, realizing that like if and when he finishes like a top 20 wide receiver, he's good enough to do that on a week-to-week basis. If I get burned based off the fact that he's the number one with all this ability, then like I can sleep well at night knowing that like, hey, there's nothing I can do about that. And it's kind of the same thought process with Garrett Wilson here. He's going to be still in that volume-based, high-end wide receiver 3, low-end wide receiver 2. I probably would be rolling him out in this game because of the buys. If it wasn't because of the buys, I would be sitting him. Kyle Pitts, I don't think is a roll because I just don't know how much there's any predictability for points being scored. So like that's going to limit his ability to score touchdowns. It's the same thing with Tyler Conklin. And the Falcons defense and the Jets defense are pretty safe rolls this week. Cardinals and the Steelers. This is an interesting game. I think there's going to be a lot more the possibility for a lot more points than Vegas was implying overall. Where are they at? Only 41 points. I could definitely see the over on this game. So Kyler Murray would be a start. Primarily, the reason why Kyler Murray would be the start, he's been rather inaccurate in the passing game. It's just because he's going to be able to get home with the nimbly bimbly. So that's why I would be rolling him out. Kenny Pickett is another one. Like with all the buys, he's a priority stream for me based off the Cardinals. I could definitely see that they're going to be able to put some points up in the passing game. James Conner would be a sit if I could get away with it. I just don't see a way. Like you're trying to predict that he falls in the end zone with Kyler Murray being the guy that's usually going to score. He's not really being involved in the passing game. I could definitely see that Michael Carter is going to be the guy that works in more. This could turn into a timeshare. I'm already expecting to see a little bit of an uptick with DeMercado and Michael Carter. So that might only leave James Carter in that same 40% range that he was last week. And that was in a blowout. So I could definitely see overall that he's going to be limited in his usage. And these guys are going to basically become very situational backs. But if there was a guy that I would be picking up and cuffing, it would be Michael Carter at this point. Najee Harris and Jalen Warren are in that low-end RB2 range. I think they're weekly starts regardless. And this is a good matchup to be rolling them out, if I can remember correctly. The Cardinals are the third worst rush defense. So, yes, I'm rolling both of those guys out, expecting that they'll both get home on the ground. Even though touchdowns are not overwhelmingly predictive, this would be a week that I would not be surprised that both of them get home in the rushing game. Marquise Brown did get, I think, a limited practice in today, so he's questionable along with Trey McBride. I would be rolling him out, especially because of the bye weeks, expecting to try and catch those air yards. Those air yards are not necessarily a bad thing. Michael Wilson ruled out, not surprising with the bye week coming up next week, so I wouldn't expect him back until week 15 at the 49ers. And again, with the guys like Rondell Moore and Greg Dortch, I just don't feel comfortable chasing guys with low upside and low ceiling at the same time. So like I wouldn't be rolling either one of those guys out if I can get away with it. And again, like an Alec Pierce interests me more trying to get lucky on a bomb than Rondell Moore with limited opportunities now that he's in that Michael Wilson role, or Greg Dortch being that like slot type guy. Like either one of them I think is less predictive or has a less opportunity to win me a league than an Alec Pierce for the Colts or something like that. So George Pickens, I do think this week because of the matchup is a pretty strong role. The matchup and the buys, he's a strong role. Same thing with Deontay Johnson. Thought process: one of these guys is going to get the targets, one of these guys is going to get home. Trey McBride, he's still flirting with that unicorn land overall with targets, so he's going to be a start. Did get a limited practice in Friday, so I feel much better about that, especially with the release of Zach Ertz. I did see that Ertz did clear waivers, so he is now a free agent, and I think I saw that the Eagles are maybe the top team to land his services. I don't know how much of a how fantasy relevant he's going to be overall, regardless. It's going to be a very niche thing. He's going to have to go to a good offense that can support a second or third target, and that offense is going to have to, like, how many of those offenses need a tight end that slots in, and they need a guy that we can predict is going to get those targets. I just don't know how easy that's going to be if you're thinking about stashing him in the bye. Pat Freiermuth is a start, especially because tight ends can never lose me my week. This is a good overall matchup against not a good our defense, so like I feel pretty good trying to chase the upside of Pat Freiermuth right there, middle of the road. And again, some of the stats are misleading because teams tend to pass more on teams that they can't run on, or vice versa. But overall, I think he's a good role. And the Steelers defense is probably an okay weekly play at this point, especially against the Cardinals, because the Cardinals are not a particularly good football team. I probably would not be rolling the Cardinals defense against the Steelers, because I just don't think there's enough talent there. And the Steelers could control the game overall with the run in such a manner that they don't need to score points. This is the game of the week from a fantasy perspective, as far as I'm concerned, the Dolphins and the Redskins. So Tua would be my number one quarterback of the week overall, just from an analytics standpoint. Like, if we're trying to chase something and we're going up against, or trying to find like the third worst passing defense, and this is when they had the stats with a good pass rush on the edge, they traded away both their pass rushers, so they have no edge pass rush. They have a really bad secondary. So I could definitely see that there's going to be a lot of points scored by the Dolphins. So I'm rolling out Tua with a lot of confidence. Same thing with Sam Howell. They're going to have to keep up with the Dolphins. So even though Sam Howell may be a sack machine and he may have some turnovers, I don't care, because from a fantasy perspective, I expect that he will throw touchdown passes, and he may get some nimbly bimbly on the ground. Raheem Mostert, this is something to monitor, especially with all the buys. Like, you're probably rolling out Raheem Mostert. You're not particularly happy about it. Devin Achane, it says will play. You also should be monitoring Jeff Wilson for whether or not he's active. It's probably a good possibility, as I stutter all over the place. It's a good possibility that if Jeff Wilson is active with Achane, they will not be playing special teams, which means that they will just be active in order to all get opportunities. And that means that that would hurt Raheem Mostert even more if he's part of a three-headed monster instead of a two-headed monster. So that's something to be aware of if I am the Raheem Mostert owner going into this game. I would be rolling Brian Robinson out in half-point PPR, full PPR. He's like running back 5 at this point. Like, he's just set and forget. Don't overthink it. Even though this may, in theory, look like Antonio Gibson game. Again, this is fantasy. If you start trying to get cute, you're going to lose the points that you could have got. Regardless, I probably would be rolling out my Antonio Gibson shares because of the bye weeks with the game script in mind. And he would be a priority cuff to Brian Robinson. Tyreek Hill, obviously, rolling him out. Jalen Waddle, I'm rolling out, and I'm rolling out all my weapons I can for the Redskins, trying to guess right. And if we look at that Cowboys Seahawks game, maybe we can't guess who's going to get some of these other touchdowns. Drake Ferguson and Brandon Cooks may not be as predictive as CeeDee Lamb. It could have been Jalen Tolbert or Tony Pollard got a red zone target. I was watching the game. Some of these other guys could have gotten home in the game, but again, that's the part of fantasy that we can't predict. All we can predict is that certain guys will have opportunities in this game, and I would imagine that there's going to be 40 to 50 passes going around. So, I would just be rolling out all these guys, and if I'm wrong, I'm wrong, but, somebody's going to score touchdowns in this game. They have to. So, Dotson is probably the guy I would be rolling out number 2. Curtis Samuel will be the guy I'd be rolling out number 3. Logan Thomas, again, I'd be rolling him out, expecting that he's going to get the beneficiary of these other guys going down the field and then checking him down to him. The Dolphins I would be rolling out against Sam Howell, turnover machine, sack machine, in a script where the Dolphins should be pinning their ears back. So even with the loss of Jalen Phillips, I would be rolling out the Dolphins defense. And of course, the worst fantasy defense against one of the best fantasy offenses. I would not be rolling out the Redskins D. All right, Broncos and Houston. Keep my expectations behind this a little muted as I look up the combined point score, because they had a little higher in this game than I was a little bit expecting, 47 points. So the Broncos have looked a little bit better, but they don't have to turn this into an absolute shootout to stay with the Texans. Their defense in particular has been playing a little bit better. I wouldn't put all my eggs in one basket into this game, and I'll get into it in a little bit in a second. Because of the buys, I still think that Russell Wilson is a low-end streamer, so I would feel pretty comfortable that he will probably be able to throw a touchdown pass and have the opportunity to fall into the end zone himself. CJ Stroud, he's up there in that sub-elite category, probably matchup proof at this point. I'm just rolling him out, not overthinking it. Javonte Williams, a volume-based guy at this point. Samaje Perine is one of the more valuable handcuffs, so I would be cuffing Perine to Williams in this game. Devin Singletary, again, my expectations that his overall snaps will go down as Damian Pierce gets a little bit more healthy. But at this point, I think Devin Singletary is a weekly start, again, with all the buys. Cortland Sutton, I'm still rolling him out, expecting that, if he doesn't get me home with a touchdown, I still have a low enough or passing floor that I can survive the week with that 40-degree day. So here's the problem right now with the Texans from a predictability standpoint. So Nico Collins looks like he's going to play. Noah Brown may play. And then Tank Dell is probably going to be a play. And then trying to predict which one of these guys gets home on a week-to-week basis is going to be get tougher and tougher to do. So, am I rolling out my Texans shares? Absolutely. Should I have the expectation that I may get burned because it may not be this guy's week? Yes. Now, the good news behind this is Dalton Schultz may not be playing, so those targets are going to have to go someplace else. It's probably not going to be the backup tight end. Again, vacated targets tend to go to running backs, but with these 3 wide receivers, I could definitely see that they'll just be scheming up plays for these other guys. This is a really good offense. It is well coached, so I would be rolling out my shares. I just think with the Noah Brown, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell all potentially being healthy for the first time, or at least in a while, that my expectations about all these guys sustainable at the same time is probably no. So they are going to be in that boom bust range. Broncos defense, probably not going to be rolling them out against the Texans. Texans defense, at this point, I would mute this a little bit. I think that the Broncos are getting better, and if the script is not in the benefit of the Texans, to which they can pin their ears back and get after Russell Wilson, I think it limits their upside. So I would probably be looking to go someplace else. And again, the Titans and the Colts would probably interest me a little bit more. Again, when we're predicting these things earlier in the year, Denver looked like a good play against Houston. Now they don't, but this would still be the week. If I'm a Texans owner, I would be preparing them for this stretch with the Jets, the Titans, the Browns, and then the Titans again. So, I would be rolling them out, realizing that there are probably better plays if I don't have the roster flexibility to roll another defense out. All right, Panthers and Buccaneers. This should be a lower implied points game overall. So I tried, 36.5. So not expecting to roll a lot of toys out in this game. With the expectation, Bryce Young is a sneaky streamer. Again, let's see. The Buccaneers are the second worst passing offense, and we can also predict, we can guess that the Panthers may get a bump because if the coaching staff was bad and ownership fired them from a reason to see what they have in Bryce Young, the number 1 overall pick, they're at least going to go out swinging, doing what ownership wants to see Bryce Young do. So this would be a week versus the matchup to be rolling Bryce Young out and expecting an uptick overall in passing volume, which is what we're looking for. Baker May, because of the matchup, is probably a good role to be in that 2 touchdown range, 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. So this would be probably an expectable stat line, again, going up against the Panthers at a floor. Chuba Hubbard, I probably would be rolling him out because of the overall opportunity, but I also would be cuffing him with Miles Sanders. Rashad White, he's that low-end RB1 and in a really good matchup, so I feel really good about rolling him out. The ghost of Adam Thielen, if I can get away with not rolling Adam Thielen this week, I would, just based in the downturn of opportunities, which means that Jonathan Mingo, this would be one of the guys that, if I'm chasing the analytics, the uptick of an opportunity and the change in coaching staff would be something I would be chasing in Jonathan Mingo this week. All right. Mike Evans is a top 10 wide receiver. I'm not overthinking it. Chris Godwin, the matchup says this is a Chris Godwin week. So, with all the buys, I would feel okay rolling Chris Godwin out if I need that safe floor. Cade Otton at this point, I think, is a low-end tight end 1 with a good matchup. So I would be more I would feel better about rolling Cade Otton out with the possibility that with his snaps, he could get me a touchdown than Chris Godwin at this point. If you're wondering, the Panthers, I don't think are a very good defense. And even though the Buccaneers offense may not be good, it's just probably not a good matchup. The Buccaneers, if I have the opposite thought process this week, that Bryce Young will not turn the corner with the firing of the coaching staffs, the Buccaneers defense would be a good role against that bad Panthers defense. All right, Browns and Rams. So Joe Flacco right now looks like he's trending towards starting for the Browns. DTR probably wouldn't be a good role this week overall. Like, he's not the passing volume guy. He would be the rushing guy. But the Joe Flacco is going to influence some of the other guys down the line. Matthew Stafford probably wouldn't be rolling him out against Cleveland. I did look up that Myles Garrett looked like he does have structural problems with his shoulder, but they are expecting him to play this week. Jerome Ford would be the biggest beneficiary in my mind. Jerome Ford and Njoku of Joe Flacco being the starter and just getting the checks downs, the 7 targets last week against the Broncos. So I could see that continuing. So Jerome Ford would be a very good start in my mind going forward. With the expectation, I think Kareem Hunt right now is probably the cuff on paper. Even though if I don't have him in my league, I would be picking up Pierre Strong to cuff at this point. I would be a little bit more excited about Kareem Hunt starting because I think he has the higher upside to score touchdowns than Jerome Ford does. Let's see. Kieran Williams is a unicorn with his usage. I'm not overthinking that. I don't think there's a cuff for the Rams. Amari Cooper is trending towards playing, so those vacated targets may not be there. Something we're looking at. Elijah Moore, I still do think is in that safe floor range of opportunities for wide receiver 3s if you're into that thing. But if I'm chasing the upside, I'm chasing Cedric Tillman. Overall, I think the expectations of these guys should be lowered if Amari Cooper starts. So if I'm waiting on that thing, if I don't see Amari Cooper start, then that means that those targets need to go someplace and I can chase some of this upside. All right, Cooper Kupp. Probably Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua are still roles. Their high upside wide receiver 2s should be downgraded this week because of the matchup. And again, the Browns don't need to turn this into a high scoring game regardless. So they can make the game uglier, which means there's going to be less passing volume to go around to these two guys. So my expectation, they would be in that wide receiver 2 type range this week. And I wouldn't be rolling out Tutu Atwell to try and catch that lightning in a bottle. David Njoku, I do think, is upgraded, both because if Flacco is the starting quarterback, the way that they use Njoku is kind of like a running back with the checkdowns anyway, and to go along with the fact that if Amari Cooper's out, that would still upgrade David Njoku even more. So this is one of the top tight end plays this week in my mind. Tyler Higbee, I would not be chasing these touchdowns, especially against the matchup. Browns defense, I think, is a good role. They are still one of the better roles. I'm not entirely scared of the Rams offense. And the Rams defense is a sneaky play, regardless of who the quarterback is for the Browns. All right, 49ers and Eagles. Again, this is one of those games that has that higher implied point total, 48 points. So I would feel very comfortable rolling out all these guys, regardless of whether or not I think the defenses are good or not. Brock Purdy is a roll. Jalen Hurts is a roll. Even if the matchup is necessarily bad, he can either get me home with the throwing touchdowns or the rushing touchdowns. I don't really care. Christian McCaffrey's a unicorn. I'm not overthinking it. Elijah Mitchell is a priority cuff overall. DeAndre Swift. This would be one of the things that, again, I think that the upside and the floor of DeAndre Swift, his upside is capped because he's not going to have the greatest opportunity to score touchdowns. He's not the receiving back either in this offense. So his floor can be relatively low. But again, I don't think that most of us are going to have the ability to bench DeAndre Swift and those opportunities that he's going to get. Kenneth Gainwell, I don't think is necessarily the cuff, but if he's available, you might have to pick him up. I do think that Rashad Penny is the cuff if you're being cute. Brandon Ayuk, and the all the 49ers toys, and I've been talking about this all year, and it's the same thing with the Eagles toys. So Brandon Ayuk and Deebo Samuel, they're going to be roles just because the ceiling that they can give you. Same thing with George Kittle. They're all roles this week, knowing that some of them may not get home. It's the same thing with AJ Brown and Devonta Smith. I do see that there's a possibility of higher implied points because both these teams have good offenses. So I'm just going to be rolling out my toys and not overthinking it. Dallas Goedert, right now, he practiced Friday. So if you have him, I guess you're rolling him out regardless of the matchup. 49ers defense, I'm not going to overthink it. And probably the more I think about it, overall, I probably would be thinking about rolling out the Eagles against the 49ers. Again, if these teams have to score points, there's a greater possibility of turnovers and sacks. And when we look at Brock Purdy, he has had a little bit of a hard time, not fumbling the football and not throwing interceptions, even though he's played better in the last few weeks. Higher implied points means more pressure on the offense, means that the defense is in better play. So like there is a possibility of, the Eagles being a stream this week, regardless of what the tea leaves say. Patrick Mahomes, obviously you paid for him. You're starting him in a not bad matchup. Jordan Love, I probably would be sitting him. The Eagles do have, the Chiefs do have a relatively good defense this year. So I'm not going to be expecting that Jordan Love's going to be able to get home with the volume based off of some of the other matchups. Kenny Pickett would be the guy that I would be thinking is going to have a better opportunity to get home this week than Jordan Love. But again, at this point, you're just chasing these touchdowns, and sometimes that's what we do in fantasy. Isaiah Pacheco. So the thing that I was going to talk about is McKinnon is questionable for Sunday Night Football. And that if he's active, that downgrades Isaiah Pacheco slightly. I'm still rolling Isaiah Pacheco. It's just the difference between do I have a running back one or do I have a running back two? And then I do think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is probably the cute stash, and or cuff, and Jerick McKinnon is probably going to have the more fantasy value going into the playoffs. So AJ Dillon, it does say that he's ready for week 13, whatever that means. Aaron Jones ruled out. Patrick Taylor may not be the cuff. I did see that they did pick up James Robinson. And if you're wondering why I talk about James Robinson so much, is I could see a guy like him, because he can pass block, and he's relatively trusted, that if he got the opportunity to start, he would get that 60 to 70% of the opportunities. So watching a guy like that hanging around for that opportunity to come in and have the coach's trust is pretty valuable, as opposed to like a Patrick Taylor that I'm not sure that the coaches would necessarily trust to take over that bulk of the work when it mattered for the offense. And again, James Robinson re-signed with the practice squad for the Packers. So monitoring AJ Dillon up until today to see what the backfield was going to be like and whether or not James Robinson was going to be a sneaky pickup. Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice right now, he's ascending. The idea would be that he would continue to get higher route participation, which means that even though I think that his overall ceiling is capped because he plays with Travis Kelce and the Chiefs offense has been not as advertised. The issue is like I want to continue just to trust that the opportunities will be there. He may not get me there every week, but he may be in that low end wide receiver 2 range, and I just don't know it. I don't want to overthink it at this point. Kadarius Toney is in line to play, so the idea that might hurt Rashee Rice overall floor because some of those opportunities may not be there this week. Christian Watson, I would be chasing this at this point, expecting that like they may be able to continue to get him home. He's going to be a boom bust guy, but they may not need that against the Chiefs. So I would be rolling him out with the bye weeks. I would not necessarily be as high on this if it wasn't because of the bye weeks. I do think the Chiefs are a good defense. They could take him away, but at this point, it's my ability to compete with my opponent. Do I need the upside of a Christian Watson, or can I go with the safer floor? And again, that's the same thought process. If they take away Christian Watson, still trying to get Romeo Doubs, who's been really good in the red zone when it comes to converting as a receiver. Jaden Reed, if I can get pieces of this, there's a possibility this turns into a shootout, so I could get a little bit deeper. And then if you're wondering about Dontavian Wicks, and the biggest thing about Wicks is those opportunities that he was getting before he got injured are going to potentially be going back to them, which would downgrade Reed and Dobbs and Watson if he's going to be able to take away some of those opportunities. Travis Kelce may no longer be a unicorn, but he's a weekly start. Tucker Kraft, like he's a guy that I would be chasing these snaps again with tight ends not being able to lose me a week. I could just chase the opportunity and potentially get home. The Chiefs would be a roll against the Packers. I could definitely see that as a sneaky play this week. The Packers may not be a bad defense to be rolling up against that defensive Chiefs team. All right. Jake Browning against Jacksonville. I probably would not be rolling Jake Browning out, even though it would not surprise me that he finishes as a top 10 quarterback because of the weapons that the Bengals do have. Trevor Lawrence, I would be rolling out, especially after last week's performance by the Bengals against Pittsburgh. I could definitely see that the Jacksonville Jaguars will be able to take advantage of them in the passing game. Joe Mixon overall, again, this is another guy that I'm probably going to have to roll out, even though I realize that I shouldn't be. He's just going to be a volume-based guy with limited opportunity to score touchdowns. Travion Williams probably excites me more at this point than Joe Mixon if he can get the work. He's the cuff. ETN, I'm still rolling him out there. He may be downgraded overall just because of whatever's going on with Jacksonville. Dearness Johnson, I can continue to see eating into the opportunity a little bit of ETN, but I would be cuffing him. Ernest Johnson is probably a priority cuff at this point. Jamar Chase probably falls into that wide receiver 2 range because of Jake Browning, but I'm rolling him out. T. Higgins, I did see someplace else that he is trending towards playing this week. If T. Higgins doesn't go and I'm chasing the upside, it's not Tyler Boyd, it's Trenton Irwin. Again, going to probably be working from the outside to 72% snaps. And again, the idea behind this would be that they're going to take away Jamar Chase. Those targets need to go someplace. If Higgins is out, it may be Trenton Irwin the week. All right, Calvin Ridley, I feel pretty confident rolling out this week in that high efficiency boom bust range. If I'm chasing the floor, it would probably be Christian Kirk. Zay Jones may have his weeks. Again, to be advised that like both these guys are going to be volatile because of the other guys that are going to get on the field. Again, Evan Ingram, it ain't broke. Don't fix it. Probably going to have not have the upside going into the playoffs, but as a weekly starter, I'm not going to overthink it with his opportunities. All right, the Bengals defense would not be rolling them out. The Jaguars defense, I would against Jake Browning. Always playing the defense against backup quarterbacks is just not necessarily a bad way to go. There's going to be a few teams that have good backup quarterbacks overall, and I think that's all I got for the week. So hopefully this helps you guys set your lineups.